So welcome. We're looking at today creating Desmos activities. So the idea behind this and part of the description we talked about level 2. So if you've used Desmos activities before and are kind of looking at how can you modify them to do more, or if you're looking at creating your own, I just kind of want to open up the door to the possibilities there. In an hour session here, we will not be able to cover everything that there is for it. It is just a limitless ceiling of opportunities, and you'll see some resources today that other people have created that are just amazing in terms of the abilities that the activities have. But just want you to see how you could really take what's out there, modify it to best fit what you want to use. And if you want to start looking at doing some of your own, where you can start and kind of play around with it. There's a lot of resources there, but just really the creativity that you can bring in can really put your own spin on what's there. So I have a student.desmos.com link up there. This is a set of opener screens that Desmos has come out with after our current shift to distance learning. If you want to log into the code, it should be live if you're watching this video later, to go through and see some of them. And then later on, and this will show how we could even take these and bring them in. So if you've used Desmos before, this is our teacher dashboard. We can see our students working through the assignments. Once you create an activity, it'll open up and behave the same way as a normal activity would. You'll have your dashboard and be able to go through. But what I want to look at is kind of where some of these are looking. So this is one I started with. It's taking a graph. The students will plot a point, or those in attendance here are plotting where they're at. And this is a good way to set up to get feedback where our comfort level is and the grade that they teach. Each of these dots here, as the students in the room have interacted, have placed it there. I get the overlay to give me the feedback to where we're at for our those in attendance. So then we go through and we have some activity openers and checking for understanding slides that, again, Desmos has created. If we look at our overlay here of our robot, as they move the point, they can make it happy or sad. If you want to put this at the beginning of an activity for your students and kind of see where they're at, you get some feedback on the right when they add some more responses. And that's kind of where these are going. They're just giving us different ways to kind of open up to our student and kind of hear their voice and see where they're at with this current change in their learning routine. This one, we have the energetic to tired, positive to negative scale, moving points to see where we're at. Let's get to, it's just students here. So these last four here then go to kind of a check for understanding. If we were looking at the end of an activity, whether it's something that's already made or you create something on your own, you could put these at the end where it's going to be a sliding scale here. If they agree or disagree with a statement, they can see where they're at in the learning process. We can drag on two levels. How well do you understand and how do you feel? Those Clovis Unified teachers that answered our survey about a week and a half ago, we had this about your distance learning and online. This is something that we took, Leanne and I, edited what was there and then changed it to what we needed to kind of get the feedback that we wanted. So these things are all out there. They're available. We don't have to start from scratch from them. And we're going to see how we can bring these and easily put them into our own activity. So it's open. I'm going to shift over to look at some other activities. If you want to leave this open, you can. But we're going to go look at creating our own activity. So normally, when we land at teacher.desmos.com, you have this page. If I go over to down at any of these activities, these are ones that are pre-made, and there's quite a few of them that we can take and create our own copy of. So what I'm going to do is I have a collection here, and I'm going to look at Match My Line. Match My Line is a setup Desmos activity that looks at graphing linear equations. It starts with slope-intercept and eventually goes to point-slope. So I'm going to take this today, and I am going to copy and edit. If you're not going to be able to do that, it's usually because some of the coding or part of the activity that it requires is not stuff that Desmos has released yet. Those in some cases will not. Parabola slalom or line slalom is another popular one. That's one in particular that I looked at maybe using for today, but we couldn't edit. But this one, match by line, we have. And so what this gives us is kind of looks like PowerPoint. Here's our slides down the left, and we can go through and look at the activity already made. If we were going to create an activity, it wouldn't start with everything filled in. We would go through and create the stuff as we go through, and we'll look at that in the next part. But it gave me my own version of match by line. So let's just put Davidson match by line. This is my own copy. Whatever edits I do to it does not change the original one, but it now gives me something that I can go back and access. As I look through, like we said, everything's already here from the original. If you want to change text, you can go in, change your greeting, change the instructions. If you go in and change stuff, you can always click preview up in the top right, and that goes back to that student view that you would see. So as you kind of start to get a little bit more adventurous and go to look and start changing things, you can always make sure it still works before you publish, send it out, and the students can't work through because of some changes. And what happens is we have this little cog here. I got ahead of myself. This little cog, this is where what they call the computation layer or the CL gets done. So the coding that occurs on some of these activities, which is out there, and there's plenty of resources for that, that's where a lot of that happens. So in some cases, you may not see text here, but it would be behind the cog in the coding layer. I can click on the graph. I can look at how things are set up. As you look and want to start playing with it more, you can start changing how these things are set up and create new versions of problems that you're going through. But let's kind of look through and let's look at this one. So what the students see is this problem. Given one line already, they need to plot 5 more lines. Each line should pass to the origin and one of those points. And what they do as they interact is they go through and type the equation. So let's say one of them is, I think it's negative 2x. So let's check my work. And that goes through and graph the line. Now, if they went through and filled in each one, they'd go graph again, and it goes through and does this as a way to check. There's a lot of little pieces that's going here, but it's still something that we can easily take and use. And what happens is we notice all of this stuff. Now, as you start off, this is all the coding that they have to it. We don't need to know how to use that. What we can do is just copy what they've currently made and bring it into our own activities. I challenge you, if you get interested in it, you can go in, you can start trying to move points around and try to read what's going on from that, but we kind of already have this stuff set up. And so sometimes if you change certain things that coding may not match up, this is where it's good to use the preview and go back and check. And there's just kind of a learning curve as you're playing through it. Here's another example. This is one on the student side, is a choosing who's right or who's wrong off of a problem, which is a good way to, they're going to check. I believe it asks for them to explain their answer. It's even going to show their classmates' responses. So these settings are there that we can set up and play with and see what they're looking at. If we look at this problem, they're given an equation. They need to change what's in the equation to get it to go through the point. Now, if you're looking at this problem and saying, you know, I want them to have to explain their answer, it's going to have them, after they type in the equation, pop up a text box where they're going to go through and have to give a solution. So it looks like, let's see if I can get this one on the spot here. I submit my answer. Now it's asking for them to explain their thinking. And as you're doing these things from a distance, it's a really good idea to, even though they got the answer, kind of figure out what their thinking is, because you'll be able to bring back their voice and kind of hear where their thoughts are. If you don't want to do that, you can unselect it. If you want them to see what other classmates responded, so after a few students have gone through and there's some answers collected, a student can see their classmates' responses after they submit their own and kind of get an idea kind of to check their peers, like if they're working in a group, a way to check with each other and how they're doing. So as we keep going through this, we're going to eventually reach here. Let's just go to preview and look. We're going to eventually kind of reach something we don't want. So I'm looking at challenge 5 here, and that gets the point slope. And maybe I don't want to open this much up to my students. Now, when we set up assignments and you run it in the dashboard, you can always restrict what slides they can get to. But in this case, I'm just going to cut this one down and get rid of any slide from 8 on, because I don't want to use this one. I could also come back later and when it's point slope, maybe delete the slides previous and then focus on the ones that I want. So in the same way that we treat a PowerPoint slide, we're going to go through and just delete the screens after it. So now I don't have to worry about going back and making sure it's restricted. I can just open this assignment up. The students can work through. It now stops at slide 7, which was my last slope-intercept problem, where they can go through and work. Oh, that one's yeah, we'll leave that one. And go through and answer it. But let's add a little bit more of a personal touch. So we had those opener slides that we looked at. So if I wanted to go up here and it's welcoming to the match by line, but I want to kind of get an idea to where they're currently at, I can bring in other slides to this. Now, if I wanted to start from a blank slate, I can go down here to the bottom left and just add a slide. This is what a blank slide normally looks at. In a few minutes, we'll start with a blank one altogether and build through, but this is what they normally start at. Let's make it a little bit easier for us. Let's go take one of the openers. So up here, let me go back to my opener screen. And where you can also get this as I'm going through clicking my collections, these are ones I have pre-saved. Over here on the left, they have their Desmos ones, and their starter screens is where they have them. The one you guys looked at in the beginning was just combining these two together. But let's go to this one, starter screens. I like the robot. So I open this one up in the preview. This is where we look at to see if what we want to use. What's really cool about this is I don't have to open up the editing side. I can just copy this slide itself. Now, I could do Control-C, or this little button right here copies the screen. I go back to my activity, and I'm just going to do Control-V, paste it, and now it has the slide in the beginning. So I can find things that I like and bring them in. So if you have that activity, for example, marble slides. Marble slides is a popular one that maybe you want to put a marble slide at the end of an activity so the students can play and kind of explore. With the marble slides, you can take the activity that you have, open it up, and just from the preview screen, right here, copy it, paste it into your activity, and you now have something to work with. So here's my activity. I've cut it down. I've added something. If I wanted to bring in a check for understanding, again, I can go to the starter screen, check for understanding. Let's do the lesson wrap up. I'm going to copy, go to my activity. I want to paste after this one, and now I have kind of a question to end with to bring it together. When that's done, you can always preview, make sure, work through to check everything's in a good place, but you're just going to click next. If you want the link that you can share, it copies all of the description that it had originally. This one happened to have translations. If you pick an activity that may not have that description, it may not have all the details there, but I'm just going to publish. And now I have my new activity with my robot, with my wrap up, only with the slope intercept that I could then create a class code and then run it with my students. So now this assignment, this activity lives within your profile. So if you were to actually go to custom, there's our activity we just made. We can open it back up and it's good to go. If you want to go run it with your class, you can share it. You would have a link. You could post to Google Classroom. You could use on Remind. If you wanted to add it to one of your collections, if you're gathering the ones that you have, you can create your collection and add it to it, but it's all yours and ready to be used. So let's go now and start from a blank one. Do we have any questions, Leanne?
Nope, it looks really good.
Okay. So now let's start a new activity. So all of these activities are there and we can use them to bring in, but sometimes we want to find a good fit to bring it into our classroom. So a homework check. Right now, the students may be working on things away from the classroom. You want to make sure they understand it. So maybe you kind of make a little homework quiz of selections of problems from that. You want to pick problems that are similar that you want to check, or you just want to get them on here to make sure the understanding is there so you can kind of get some feedback. So we're going to create an activity from that. Again, you go to custom. Gives you the choice of a polygraph or a new activity. You can make a polygraph, and it's very similar to like the game Guess Who, where you have 16 boxes or tiles. You're just going to put in text, graphs, images, and create them. There's a lot of polygraphs out there. I would recommend, if you're kind of trying to think of one that you want to do on your current topic, you could go up and search polygraph, see the list. You could go to Google, type Desmos polygraph, whatever topic you're looking for. They're there. It just might not be worth the time in creating it. If you do have questions on creating one, you can always contact me and we can walk through, but it's kind of a good one to go look for. But let's look at just making a new activity. And let's call this one our homework check. So now, just like our match by line, we have our setup, a little bit less than what we started with, but we can kind of look through where we're at. We have our first screen or our first slide. We're going to add more on the left side. We can add a title. So this is going to be a and this is not what I would put for students, maybe problem 1 or welcome or whatever we want to put there, but I just want you to kind of think of the type of problem we are looking at. So given a problem, provide a written solution. The parts that we have here, these are all things that we can insert. You can insert a Desmos graph. We can insert tables. You can add a sketch box on one of those openers that was like draw a picture of how you're feeling today. You could have a sketch that they can do. We're going to add a media. So we're going to add an image. These need to be downloaded, and they do have a file size restriction to them. But let's find a problem. I'm just going to drag this in. It's just a snip photo that I have on my desktop, but I'm just going to drag it in, or you could upload it as before. I borrowed an open middle problem. A note would be just kind of written instructions that we want to put in here. But what I want them to do is I want them to give me an input. So an input can be under 2 forms. It can either be a text, written response, or it can be a math response. So right now, we just want them to give us a written solution. So if I look at what I have, they're given a problem, and they're asked to type me a solution. They do have the option to add kind of math type here, but it's not going to be a math response. It's something we would expect to write in sentences. Very similar to like, how are you feeling today? They had a text box to do that. So we want them to provide us a justification to something. We have a problem that's more open, something that lends itself to more sentence form. This is where we'd want to look. If I want them to see their classmates' responses, I can have that. If I don't, I'll unselect it. Now, let's think, well, what if we wanted a more math response to that? So I could create a new problem, create a new screen and do that. But instead of doing that, I kind of did some work here already. Let's just duplicate it. So I've made a copy of it. So now I want them to give me a math solution. And what I need to do here, inserted the image the same way. We could drag it over. If we got rid of it, we could select media again, and it automatically will go to the left side and your inputs will be on the right side. It's just ways that it's set up. It doesn't have the flexibility of like a PowerPoint where you can like move things around. It's pretty set to where the location is going to be. Let's just drag in the next image here, or the same image this time. But maybe this time I want them to give me a math solution. So I'm going to change it to math. If we look at it, it's now more of that Desmos formatting for a math. We do this. We're going to have points. We're going to act like these are the right answers. So when I'm just typing things in, we can type those in and they can submit their solution. I can have here ask them to explain. So once they give me a solution, it has an explanation. So it's almost like it adds a layer onto what that first screen had. The first screen, just the written solution. Now I can still get that explanation. And again, we have that option for classmate responses as well. Depending on the activity, I don't know if I would start with this. If I'm just trying to run this to see where the students are at, having it set up, they get responses. I can go back into the teacher dashboard and look to see where they're at, see their comments. You now have the option of giving feedback within Desmos. Give that feedback or take the snapshots, collect the answers. Like there's a good way that you could kind of gather this stuff that's not just them seeing their classmates' responses. So we have our two problems. Let's make another one now. So now we're going to think about a card sort. So I have a new screen. So a card sort is kind of like a flashcards, moving things around and grouping them. So that's going to be over here in the more option. So a couple of these, an action button in some of the activities is when they actually like click check my work or submit and something happens from that. There's some coding involved to that. So that one's not used too much. Geometry allows them to draw figures. So very similar to the sketch, it'll have that component. Marble slides is the activity that does have the ability to put those in. There is a little bit of editing that goes with that. If I was starting out, I'd go open a marble slide, copy the slide, put it in my presentation, and I don't have to worry about it. It's all set. Ordered list is going to be rearranging things and putting things in an order. So seeing what you need fit. But I'm going to put a card sort here. And from here, I'm just going to make kind of my cards that are going to be sorted out. So I have the option of math or text, an image, or a graph. So I'm thinking here, I want them to maybe sort out some equations of lines and the graphs that go with it. So let's go there. So I'm going to need, let's go 3 equations, 3 graphs. So let's go with, we got that math equation. Let's do this one, and let's do a negative. Oops. Right now that's text. Once I click the math, let's see how the math type. Okay, so here's my math cards, my equation cards. Now when I click graph, it's actually going to open up a Desmos graph. So it's going to be clean. It's going to be formatted correctly. I probably should make sure I write in the same equations. So there's 1. And we went negative. And you know, let's add something else to that. I want them to sort. Maybe let's add x-intercept. Let's say the x-intercept is 2. Because as well as matching them, maybe I want to add some characteristics to it, so they have to go through and group. And there's no limit. You can, well, there's probably some limit to the screen size, but you can add a bunch of these cards and go through and sort. They don't have to be paired together. You can have groups together. You can have a various number in the groups. It's up to you as you do it. I'm going to now go answer key. So now it's sorted out. Let's make sure we get them in the right place. And the x-intercept is 2, goes to this one. So this is the key that I want them to get. So what's going to happen is as a student looks at this, click done, a student is going to get this. They're going to go through and sort. And the first time they do it, it's making sure they move it, get them lined up. They'll kind of highlight, you see that box is going in it. I might add something in the instructions that says move the tiles to connect them or group them together. It's first time through, it's not always the most intuitive, but they want to group them together. What you see on your dashboard is you'll see the green showing they're grouped correctly, or the red showing they have some mistakes, but it gives them something to work with. Now, this one's kind of limited on where they're going. As I say this, I should make sure I group them correctly. But we get them there, it gives them a chance to match. So let's see, I'm giving a homework check. I have maybe a list of 6 problems that they're graphing. I could have the equations like this, and I could have the graphs, and they go through and match, and that's making sure they understand where they go. I could also, if I'm maybe having them solve equations, have a list of equations and have a list of solutions. And from here, maybe in one of them, I add not use solutions. So I add some extra ones. They're kind of like distractors to see what they can do. So then as they're looking at their tiles, they're moving the ones that match together, but they're also going to have the ones set aside. So it's kind of like a matching they would have had in a worksheet where they're drawing one to the other. It just gives that opportunity where it's not that they're just typing in answers problem after problem, but they'll be moving them around and have a way to check. So from your side, what you'll see is if they got them correct. Then from the dashboard, you can give feedback, you can take snapshots. It'll tell you what are the most common groupings, and you can start to see where they go from there. It's an option as you're starting off if you don't want to get into the coding about a way to check the answers without just looking at the list of all the solutions. Now, where we're going to go from here is kind of the next step up, because we can take the card sort idea, we can borrow an activity from somewhere else, bring it in, and it does have the way to self-check. So if we go back real quick to this page here, down here I have a list of resources, and this bottom one is from one of the Desmos fellows, the Introduction to Computation Layer Templates. And let's open that one up. So what they have here is a list of pre-made, just 1 to 2 slide templates that we can copy and paste into our activity that do specific activities. And you can kind of read through all of these. What I would do, if I'm logged in and go to this link, I would add this collection. I already have it because it's one I commonly go to. And someone has already set up that template that we can go through and do. So if I want to write an activity, you can kind of just scan through and see where they're at. They have really good details. The one we want to look at is 14, card sort feedback. So it gives feedback to the students for card sort on the same or next screen. So we open it up. It's just 2 slides. It's not a whole activity that's built. It's just a pre-made chunk that we can put into our activity and use. So if we preview it, make sure it's something that we want. We have, looks familiar. It's 3 graph equation. So we're gonna, let's see how we do here. And if I look at that, it says you have 6 cards in the activity, you have 4 correct. It's already giving me that feedback as if I was the student to how I'm doing in solving it. Let's get the last one. Okay, it's gonna tell me how many cards I have and when I'm correct. So as I'm the student doing this, this is a way they can move them around and see. Also, if we go to the next one, it says, wow, we got them all right. Well, that just looks like a green box and thing. So let's go back and change something. Let's make something wrong to see what it would look like. So let's put these 2. So now I only have 2 correct. I got the exponential function here. It's saying 2 of the 6, all right. Okay, so now it's showing me on this line, or this bar graph here, how many I have correct, and to go back and fix it. This looks like something I'd want to use. So the way we're going to do that, because it's an activity that we can borrow from, I'm going to go up here, I'm going to copy this slide. I'm going to go to my new activity. I'm going to paste it, Control V, right after. So there's our linear, quadratic, and exponential function, so what we just saw. And let's go back and let's take the next slide as well. to our activity and paste that. And this is where it's going to give us the graph. So we look, same thing as before. It has those features. We can do the same thing and it'll go through and check. But what we can do now is we can change our equations. So what if instead of 2x plus 3, and in the quadratic, I just want it to be 2x minus 3, and make this one negative 2x minus 3. We'll go into here. I'm going to change this one to now be 2x minus 3 and negative 2x minus 3. So kind of how we sometimes take a question, resort things so it still comes out as the same answer. That's what I'm trying to go from here, because someone's done a lot of the work in creating this for us. I can check my answer key. 2x plus 3 is good, 2x minus 3, and negative 2x minus 3. So it's still working. So now if I was to give this to my students, it now fits to the level I want. Linear, quadratic, exponential, trig functions, whatever you want to do, we can now change these and kind of add that our own personal twist to them. If you don't want them to be equations, if you want them to be solutions, just make sure in your answer key, the answers add to the ones you want. Now, what's interesting, what I kind of wonder about this is, where's that thing happening where it tells me this? Because back here on my slide, it just said card sort. But by some magic, it's already saying now that I have cards in this activity. And this is where that computation layer in the coding works in. So if I go up and click here, this is where they've now typed this code in that's going to count the number of cards I have and give me the cards that I have correct. And that's going to automatically put it there. And so we don't see that in the setup, but it comes out in the end. And so that's why it's important as you're bringing things in, kind of play around, make sure you'll see where things are going. You're going to learn stuff that's being used along the way. So I have my activity here. We provide a written solution. We provide a math solution, but they have to explain. I can put in any image I want of a problem. If I wanted to add a note, let's do that one. Let's duplicate. Let's get rid of this and let's just add a note here. So I've given them an assignment and I want to see if they did a certain problem correct. So let's say provide the solution to problem number 65 on worksheet 3. That's a really long worksheet. Okay, so now they have that instruction. So they will have their own paper copy at home. They can come on here, they can type it in, and it's a way to kind of do a homework check to see if they understand it. Not a lot of detail to it, but it's a way for you now to collect the results. I've tried this before. It's really nice because it's in that dashboard. If there's various other websites with such classrooms used, you get all of these images of results and it's just everywhere and it's a lot of clicking. Here, I'm going to be able to go to the student dashboard, see where the students are, and be able to get that feedback quickly. So here's our homework check. Like before, maybe I want to look at the end and think, I want to check to see how they're doing. So let's go back to, I'm clicking on way too many things, our starter screens. I want to check for understanding, and I want to see how confident they are. So I've had them do these problems. I want to see, are they confident? Are they unsure? Give me some feedback. So remember, we're going to copy that. We're going to go to the end, Control V to paste, and now we have that added to our activity. I can then publish this assignment. I can share it out to Google Classroom. I would leave it open. Students can go on. They can submit their answers. If it works really well, it'll work. You could even take it and then duplicate it, change it for a new set of problems, and then you could have this homework check built in where they can go on and do it. And then maybe as you're doing this, you kind of start to kind of explore a little bit more and find ways to bring in graphs. Or we look at our awesome list here, and I want to find a way, if I give them points, that they can move the graph to match to it. Or if I give them a picture of an equation or picture of a graph, they can write the equation. All of these resources are there. And what's awesome about this is we don't have to start from the beginning and figure out all of this coding to build up to it. We can take these things that people have already done, they've shared out, and find ways to bring it in and easily kind of get to our students and hear their voice for where they're understanding. So let's go back to I'm all over the place here. There we go. Here's our activity. Okay, it's finished. I'm going to publish it. I can add a description. Maybe, what did we say? This is homework check for section 1. I can change the image I want. It defaulted to just the first image that I had. And I can now publish it. It's ready to go, just like our match my line before. Here's my activity. If I look at it, I'm like, oh, you know, I really wanted to add something else to it. You can always go back. You can edit your activity. Do what you need to in there. Do make sure you publish from there because it'll only send out the most current copy. So we need to save. We don't want to save a draft. We want to publish to get the update. And it's ready to go. You want to add a collaborator. You can add the collaborator. They can go in and edit as well. You can share it out to your students. You can copy and edit. Careful of that. That would make the new copy of it. And so then you would have 2 versions, kind of like what we did with Match My Line. So if you wanted to make like a new section assignment, you can do that. But otherwise, you might get the long list of duplicate assignments. I might be guilty of that on accident. But it now gives us something to work with. If I wanted to add that to a collection, I'm going to add it to the one where I'm saving these things from today. I can save it to that. And that's more for your ease of access. So when I go to collections, here's our homework check that we did. Here's another one I made for practice. We can get to the ones that we want. You can also share. You can share that collection. So to your PLC and you want to give them you can share that one. If it's someone else's collection, you can add it to yours. And once you do, it again goes within your collection bit. So, resources for you. And what I've shown you in this 40 minutes or so is just barely opening the door to the things that are there. Teacher.desmos.com is that landing page that we look at where we get all of our resources. The ones you've made, the ones that are pre-made, it's just kind of the one you want to go to. Student.desmos.com is the student page. So you won't be able to get to your activities. If you go to student.desmos.com and log in, it's going to think that you're doing the activity. You don't get the features. That's where you send the students. Learn.desmos.com is the in-house Desmos training. This one is learn.desmos.com/create. These are all of their activities based off of Activity Builder. A lot of the stuff that I'm mentioning and a lot more are on here. They're usually short videos that kind of walk you through. As you go off and start to explore and start to figure this stuff out, they have examples on inserting graphs, inserting the tables. You have sketches if you want to put media in, all of those little things that were up at the top. It's just kind of how it goes through, and it's really finding the best fit. I would recommend not trying to figure out 100% of this before you start using it. Just start with basic things to get feedback from your students. And from there, you can start to grow. That's where I did. My first assignments were like, here's a problem. Give me the answer. And then you start to evolve and see where else you can go. Excellent resources that are put on through here. Also on here, we have some Desmos fellows also share information. Jay Chow is kind of like the guy for computation layer on some of the social media groups that they have or the message boards they have for computation layer. He's very popular in helping people out and the knowledge of it. This website is a fool's guide to learning CL or the computation layer. He walks through, gives you good tips, taking things apart, making a plan. It's a very, very good resource. One I've gone to just kind of get ideas in my own learning. I would definitely start there if you're kind of interested in the coding part of it. The other one is the Activity Builder Support. That is a message board type format where people will do posts and ask for help on certain ways to set up problems, and people respond to it. Desmos Assessment is Julie Ruach, is a Desmos fellow, and she presents on using Desmos as assessments within her class. Maybe that's not something you're totally ready for, but she has a lot of good links there. She brings in links from other people that are creating, and it's just kind of a good landing place for that. You can look at her sample assessment, and that is one I really like going to pull problems that I want to copy in. So she has really good examples from that. She's very active on Twitter and other social media in getting those, just reaching out and finding them. Speaking of social media, the Desmos Educators Facebook group is one I would highly recommend joining. It's a great place. They share activities that they've already created. People are posting, like, I'm trying to create a problem where I have a graph, the students type in an equation, and it graphs over it. And then you'll have comments, or people will have activities already there. It's a really, really good network that's being formed there, and ideas to pull from. So it's just getting out and finding those things. There's other resources, there's other ways to find it, but starting there, you'll find a way to follow the path when you're growing. Some activities we have down there. The quadratic assessment card sort was made by one of Clovis Unified's own, Sheila Rentz. She also has some others. If you want to contact us, we will get you in contact and share those out. And that's one, as we started this distance learning, she was looking for a way to a card sort to check for her students if they're understanding, if they know how to do the problems, and be able to get feedback. With our Math 1 lesson 811, this is one I played with, where we had in our current Math 1 pilot a way that we can bring in a textbook lesson to interact with the students through Desmos. And so it has features where they're going to type in responses, putting in text already in the box, trying a graph, seeing how it moves, typing a table, they put in values, it graphs. These are all things that as you pick up in the computation layer, you can kind of find ways to integrate into your activities. And this is where you could take an idea of, you may not have your students in front of you, but still get them to work through a lesson of new learning occurring, but still you being involved in the process and being able to give them feedback. So it's things I've played with. I'm not the super expert in this. I'm still growing and learning in it, and it's something that I think there's a lot of potential in. And I just wanted to kind of share and show you the way to get in and not like completely go crazy with it. So like I say on the bottom there, the potential is limitless. There are so many resources and so many people creating great. If you're interested in it, just picking things up and trying, finding where you want it to go, and kind of playing with it. If you have a question, if you are like, I want to create this type of problem or activity, reach out to me. I'm more than willing to help, and we'll kind of play with it as we go through.
Hey, Scott.
So, yeah.
That was fabulous. I had a question from somebody yesterday that they mailed in. If they are wanting to create and add a marble slide, they didn't see an option for that, but you have that in your pull down. Can you show how they can add those kind of things to their abilities?
Let's see.
I think it's under your name.
Yeah, you're going to go up after you log in. And I didn't mention this, but I would recommend always logging in with a nice Google account. I have my Clovis Unified, because then you don't have to remember your password and forget it. But up here, they have under Desmos Labs, you can add in these features. They're not automatically given. So marble slides, it then becomes an option in your activity. You'll need to open up the computation layer if you're going to do the coding to it, the geometry, and then that written feedback is the one that just came up in the last couple of weeks, where in the teacher dashboard, when you're doing the activity, right, this is where I click around at 10,000 of them. This is where you can now go in and provide feedback to the students. So those are the features you need to add. Once you save them, they're always open, but that gives you the access to them.